So that method, the crossing back and forth and just having a big denominator is fine if you just have a simple fractions like we had. But if you have linear factors, you should not do that. All right, it just makes it more complicated. You want to have a true least common multiple. So here we have linear factors, and what you would do is you factor first, right? Just in general, you factor first. So I've got y squared minus 9, so that's my perfect square, y times y, and perfect square. 3 times 3 is 9. And I have to have a plus and a minus so that I have a negative 9 there. Okay? So now I'll ignore that. And these are my factors. So I need to have a least common denominator. All right, so remember my least common denominator has to have all the factors. So it has to have this y plus 3, right? It has to have a y plus 3. Now I come over here. Well, this already has, this needs to have a y plus 3. Well, we've already got it, right? Check. And then so now I also need to have a y minus 3 as a factor. All right, you have to have all of them. And so this would be my least common denominator right here. So this is already set, this fraction. I don't need to change anything. But here I do. All right, I've only got one of the factors. I have y plus 3, so I need to have a y minus 3. I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by y minus 3. And I can do that because that is just 1. I'm technically multiplying just by 1. So it's going to look different, but it's the same value. So now I have a common denominator. So I'm just going to put that in the bottom. So I have y plus 3 times y minus 3. That's my common denominator. So now I'll just take care of the numerator. So I'm going to distribute this guy. So I have y squared minus 3y. And then I've got a minus here, so that would be minus 6y. All right, and then so now I have to always simplify. So I'm going to combine my like terms here, right? So that would be y squared, and then that's negative 9y all over y. I'm going to leave these as factors because I might be able to reduce. Okay, because I can factor out on the top here, I've got a common factor of y. So I could factor out y times y minus 9, right? Well, that doesn't really get me anywhere, right? There's nothing that can cancel out. So my final answer then is going to be y squared minus 9y. All right, and then I FOIL these and I get y squared minus 9 on the bottom, and that would be my final answer. Okay, and again, excluded values, y cannot equal anything that's in your denominator. Anything that would make the denominator 0 at any time in this process is an excluded value. So y cannot be positive 3, right? And y cannot be negative 3. And that takes care of these denominators as well. Okay. All right, excellent. So it's not a big deal, right? You just have to, but this is why factoring is so important. If you can factor, you will be fine. All right, so here we go. I've got this polynomial, and I've got a perfect square, x times x, and a perfect square, 1 times 1. All right, I want the middle to add up to 2, so it's going to be positive 1, and positive 1 adds up to 2. Okay, so my least common denominator has to have all the factors, so it has to have x plus 1 squared, right? I have to have 2 x plus 1s. And then this already has an x plus 1, so I'm not going to do it again. And this is where we're not doing the cross, we're not doing this because it just makes it very complicated. If you have linear factors and polynomials. All right, so we'll just leave it at this for my common denominator. So this one's all set, right? Now this guy, though, I only have one, right? So I need another one, x plus 1. Well, whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. All right, I can multiply by 1 because it doesn't change the value. And so now I've got my common denominator, right? So my common denominator is x plus 1 times x plus 1. And then when I multiply on the top, I've got 1, right, plus, and then I have to distribute this x. So that would be x squared plus x. Right? And so I have got a polynomial on the top, and the question is, can I factor that? All right, and since I can't factor that, right, I'm just going to leave it, but I'll put it in the proper order. So x squared plus x plus 1 is my numerator. And I've got x plus 1 squared in my denominator. All right. And then my excluded values, x cannot equal, in my I'll look at all my denominators. Basically, -1 is the only number that would cause me to be dividing by 0. So there's my excluded value, and here is the answer, right? There's the sum. All right, no big deal. We can do this. It just takes a few steps. You have to be patient. You have to be careful because it's very easy to make a mistake. As you've seen in these videos, I make mistakes all the time, so don't worry about it. If you do, just keep trying. So here we go. We're going to factor these guys. So that's perfect square. So I've got x times x. The factors of 6 that add up to 5 would be 2 and 3. And I want to have a positive 5, so that would be positive 2 plus 3. Okay. So, all right, we'll look at that. And then now this denominator over here, I've got perfect square, x times x. 4 is 2 times 2, and plus 2 is 4. So those would be the factors there. So now I'm looking at my least common denominator. I need to have all the factors. So I have to have an x plus 2 and an x plus 3. Right, so that takes care of that. Now I've already got, and these are both x plus 2's, right? So I have one already, but if this is squared, right, this says I have 2, then I have to make that squared. Right, it's always with least common denominator, it's the highest exponent. All right. So now that is my least common denominator. So let me write that over here. So I've got x plus 2 squared times x plus 3. Okay, I have to have all the factors. So there's my denominator. That's done. And now I need to make sure that these fractions have a common denominator. All right, so what I have here is I gotta look at what's missing in this denominator. So this denominator has x plus 2 and x plus 3, but it's supposed to have x plus 2 squared. So I need to multiply by another x plus 2. So I have an x plus 2 squared. And again, whatever I do to the top bottom, I have to do to the top. All right, so there's that. And then I come over here, well, this one already has x plus 2 squared, so what it needs is an x plus 3. So I'll do that to the top and bottom. Alright, so now I have my common denominator, x plus 2 squared times x plus 3, and x plus 2 squared times x plus 3. All right, and then now I'm just going to distribute here. So I have x squared plus 2x And now I have a negative 2, right, which is going to be distributed. So that would be negative 2x and then a negative 6. Be careful with the negatives. You have to distribute them. And it's really easy to forget, to miss that. Okay, so now you always simplify at the end. So we'll say I've got an x squared. These add up to 0, and then I have a minus 6 for my numerator. And then my denominator is x plus 2 squared times x plus 3. Right? And I'm just going to leave that like that. Sometimes you'll see the answer is all multiplied out, right? But I'm not going to do that here. You can do that if you have to. I'll go ahead and leave this like this. And then my excluded values, so x cannot equal negative 2, because that would make that 0. And x cannot be negative 3, because that would make this one 0. All right, so those are my 2 excluded values. All right, yeah, we just want to focus on actually getting to here. And then after that, if you need practice FOILing, we can do that separately. Okay, so here we go. If we are adding and subtracting fractions, we're thinking I need a least common denominator. So you've got to factor first. So y times y, 3 times 4 gives me 12, and I want to have them add up to 1. So that would be a positive 4 minus 3. Okay. And that takes care of that. And then now this factor is y times y. I want them to multiply to be 8, 4 times 2, and add up to 6. So those do. If they're both positive, they add up to 6. Okay, so I factored first. Now I'm looking for my least common denominator. And so I have to have all the factors. So my least common denominator is going to be, it's got to have y minus 3, and it has to have a y plus 4, and so that takes care of this, right? These factors. Now I've already got a y plus 4, but I need a y plus 2. Okay, so there is my least common denominator. Go ahead and just save myself some writing and put it right there. So there's my least common denominator. That's what I've got to have. Okay, so now you go back and you say, all right, I've got to have all these factors in each denominator. Okay, so I've got the y minus 3, the y plus 4, so what's missing here is the y plus 2. So I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by y plus 2. And I'm going to put it in parentheses so I don't forget to distribute. And then over here, I've got y plus 4, y plus 2, so I need a y plus 3, or minus 3, right, over y minus 3, in parentheses. Okay, so now I have, both of these denominators are the same, right, I have all the factors, and they're both the same, so now I can distribute up on top, so I get 3y plus 6, right? And then now this is a negative 2 that's getting distributed, so that would be negative 2y, and then plus 6. So on the top, I've got 3y minus 2y is y, and then 6 plus 6 is 12. So y plus 12 on the top, and then down in my denominator, I've got y those factors. Okay. And if you wanted to, you can multiply all these together and get your answer in standard form. Okay, this is factored form. All right, for standard form, you need to FOIL everything. All right, that's all there is to it. The rest of it is just practicing, practicing, practicing. And we have lots of problems for you to do, and there's also some in math space. So good luck.